exhale from receiving so much. We have those slides coming up? Oops. That's all right. She got lost in all those verses. Words from Moses. Words from Esther. Words from Jeremiah. Words from Paul to the church at Rome and to the church at Galatia. And finally, the words from Jesus, all about who we are. It's not doing. Would you just advance it to one? Who we're to be. There's not one conversation I've heard this morning. There's not one conversation I was involved in yesterday. There's not one conversation when I've been in any public place that is not about the events of right now. 1 year anniversary of the unthinkable happening in the nicest city in New Zealand. The nicest people on the planet. And a city that has experienced and suffered so much. The Kaikoura quake, it was the hundreds of quakes. The constant unknown could happen at any moment, removing any sense of predictability and comfort. I told the Leadership Lab yesterday that when I came down to have the formal conversations about coming here, I was returned to the airport, waiting on the flight, called Suzanne. She goes, well? And I said, such lovely, beautiful, nice people, but they all still have PTSD and they don't know it. And she goes, what makes you think that? And I said, within 3 minutes, they're talking about the quakes and the shootings and the pain that this particular church has experienced in the past several years. And I said, it's normal, it's natural, but it will have implications for years. The situation that we're facing now, first we mark the 1 year. The worst day that forever has changed New Zealand. And its finest day. For no country on the planet responded as Christchurch in New Zealand responded. No planet, no one on this planet has dealt with and had the right response until Christchurch. So what brings us tears should also straighten our back. But now we're facing something that most of us, even if you were alive in those Depression years in the war and can remember them, we haven't experienced them as adults facing what we face. We're a society that in our lifetime, one has changed so significantly. When Suzanne and I left Wellington and went to New Orleans after the hurricane and returned 8.5 years later, New Zealand in 8.5 years was a different place. Part of it is a world that has changed so quickly and the globalization that has changed New Zealand. We're no longer a little island country at the bottom of the world. There are people in our church who live in Christchurch but work in London. The world has shifted, and no one in our collective conscience has ever faced what we're facing right now, and no one fully has thought through the implications that are going to impact us for years. Because this will end. It will come to an end and life will return to norm. But the normal will take a while. When you're going down one of our boulevards with multiple lanes and you see an 18-wheeled tractor trailer in front of you, how many of you go, can I get in the other lane before I'm at that light? Right? Because you know when it turns green, you're going to be 6 blocks down the street before he's gone 1 block. Because it takes so long to get it going. And we're going to face that. The economy is not just going to slow, it is going to go into full-on recession. Anybody pass the prices at a petrol station? I mean, the Z station up by where I get off the motorway is like under $1.80 now. I mean, whoever thought we would see that again? Tourism has ground to an absolute halt. We will see most cruise ship companies go bankrupt. We will see a lot of airline companies go bankrupt. The tourism industry that we have come to enjoy the benefit of will take years to recover if it ever recovers. The number of people that will soon be out of work because of the tourism industry or international trade is going to compile. A little over a week ago when I went to Wellington for 2 nights to see my lads and celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday. Really went to see my lads, but I do like my mother-in-law. As you're flying into Wellington over the harbor from the north, most of us have done that, you see the working part of the harbor, and there's always logs there to go on ships to be shipped off somewhere. Now there's logs. The meat works, all of the cold storage in the country is filling up because they can't do anything with it. So it's going to back what farmers can produce and do produce. The implications have not even begun to be felt yet for us as a people in a country. More than 50% of the international travel has been curtailed. All business and governments have canceled all travel that's not absolutely mandatory. Internal flights are being cut. Required 2-week isolation for anyone returning from overseas. Well, there ends all tourism. Because if you come for 3 weeks and 2 of them you're isolated, you're not coming. Economic markets are crashing. The automatic close the New York Stock Exchange has happened twice in this past week. Travel to Pacific Island restrictions. No cruise ships at least till the end of June. Globally, thousands of universities and schools have closed. The United States has closed 5,300 plus universities, colleges, tertiary institutions. Kiwis overseas are trying to discern, do they stay, do they come home, what should they do, their whole life, wherever they're living, expatriated. By the way, 20% of all Kiwis live expatriated. We're just that kind of people. What is going to be the impact on our universities here and our schools? Sports being played with no fans. All international competition suspended. In the United States, the March Madness of the university playoff system has been canceled. The world is coming to an end in North America right now. Entire cities on lockdown. Hospitals with no room that are filling gymnasiums with patients. The United States, the most wealthy country in the world, the Rome of today, doesn't have a universal treatment plan for all its citizens. Every major large crowd event canceled. Our investments, our Kiwi savers, our pensions are all feeling it. And we're in an unhealthy society with severe emotional and mental issues. And we've never faced this. We're in new territory. Yet there are some globally inspiring stories. If you saw the people in Italy singing from their windows into the streets, banging their pots together, standing up to this challenge that we've never faced. I do need to tell you that departing from this today wasn't made easy, but through a lot of hours of listening and praying and reflecting about how do we respond. And pastors and priests around the globe are all conferring the advantage of a global world. How do we react and what do we do? Jim and Sandra's son is a vicar in Cambridgeshire. They've stopped all of the cup completely, but they're in a different situation than we are. Very isolated in the South Island, more insular than isolated than ever before. The only few cases that we have in New Zealand are all traced exactly to where it came from outside contact. We're not having the parallel infection and contact going on. Nothing has happened on the South Island. The preschools will convene tomorrow morning in Christchurch. So we're not facing the same level of fear, but we do have this need to have real vigilance. But I do have to tell you, there's no priest, pastor, vicar manual on how to take a people through this. I don't know. I'm figuring it out with you. I do know and feel from the people who are chatting with me that they will be looking for who are we to be and what are we to do. Hence those passages. Esther, Joshua taking the mantle from Moses, Paul writing to the church in the insanity of Nero's reign, Paul writing to the Galatians in central, what is now Turkey. By the way, when the Galatians would be baptized, Galatians from Gaul, what is now present-day France, they were crazy Celts. You know, the Celtic people of the British Islands and Western France were crazy. And when they would be baptized with their sword hand out of the water so they could still kill Romans. He's writing to the Galatians about who is it you were to be in these trying times of what is permanent, lifelong Roman occupation. And then Jesus' words to a people who are in an occupied land and oppressed, and leadership which was corrupt of their own people. Who are we to be and what are we to do about it as a result? And then pragmatically, what do we do to be vigilant and prudent and not be reckless? I promise you that there is a lot of thinking and talking going on. I was with the bishop on Friday night, and there's been released to all priests and vicars around the diocese a color-coded. We're still in green. We haven't gone to yellow, orange, or red in our diocese. We're still in the green sector. We're okay right now. We'll be watching. We're listening to the WHO, but we're listening to the leadership in the country, which is pretty good leadership, and the medical people in the country, and we're listening to our peers and other parishes and our bishop about what we can and should do. You'll probably see some adjustments, as I talked about, to communion occur. Pragmatically, I don't think we'll reach the point where we have to stay home. The church, that giant church I was on staff of in Portland now a long time ago, they are now meeting online. They have a whole machine to do that. But they're now meeting online and nothing is happening at the church. The doors are locked and everybody is at home. We're not there. I don't think we'll get there. I really don't think we'll get there. But I'm talking to our people who are technically smart. Can we start thinking through the process if we get there? I'm talking to the other priests and the wardens and vestry members about how do we handle multiple aspects of our ministry. But I want to tell you, such a time as this, such a time as this has never been given us as we have right now. The Chinese word for crises is 2 words: danger and opportunity. Yes, there's peril, but there's never been such of an opportunity. Do you remember the Gantt chart, the journey that people take as they move towards God and grow up in their faith? Our ESOL, which I told you would be more than successful, is somebody was signing up on Thursday and Friday. It's still growing. That's supposed to be 3 or 4 years before they ever come to church. They're showing up at ESOL and they're here the next Sunday. There was a Vietnamese family who still pray to their ancestors, know nothing about Jesus, went to ESOL and is here on Sunday. Now what you don't notice are the Pakeha who are also coming along. The 18 and 21-year-olds in the 10:30 service who just felt moved to go to church and showed up and have kept coming. And it continues. But in all of the conversations, when you're at the preservatory or black and white or at the bowling club, it's all about this. And there's a world and a society. 97% of the city doesn't know him. They have no hope, no assurance, no confidence, and they're scared. And they're longing for someone to not be fearful and show them the way and comfort them. Never in the history of the church have God's people been afraid in the face of adversity. In Nero's insanity of Rome, it were the Christians who remained when the plagues broke out. It were the Christians who remained when Nero burnt the city. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, many of you will know his story. In Germany, it's called the Evangelische Church. We would call them Lutherans. The Germans had been central to the church's thinking and health for centuries. The experience of World War I leaves Germany where it is. It gives rise to the Nationalist Party, the Nazis, and the church co-opts itself to draft behind the rising tide and popularity and strength of what became Hitler's Third Reich. There was a confessing church that said, no, this is wrong. The way it's happening is wrong. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, rising thinker and theologian, was invited to the United Kingdom and the United States, and he went. But as it got worse, he felt, I can have no voice in place after the war if I'm not there with them through the war. So he returned, opened an underground seminary, taught and led and was an influencer in the church in Germany until he was arrested and brought to a little remote concentration camp in the eastern part of Germany along the Czech border, which had been annexed by Germany by this point, in a very small town. I've been there. I've stood at the ovens where the bodies were cremated. Decades later, the odoriferous haunting still coming from those ovens. I've stood at the mound of dirt that somewhere in there his bones were, the ash from his bones were left. 3 weeks before it was liberated. In all of these days and times of peril, the church has always been the people who proclaimed Jesus really did live. He really did come from God. He really did die. He really did rise again. He really is returning. And God really does reign. In the persecuted nations which are represented in our church, they come from a church that has had to hide and has been at threat. And yet they still profess and proclaim His name. We're not facing that type of threat. We're facing this health threat. It's different. It's new. We do need to be wise. We need to wash our hands with soap and water and say the Lord's Prayer while you're doing it, because that's about the length of time you need to make sure you're good. We've got an extra sanitizing bottle. We make sure that everybody who enters that space does the holy hand washing. We will adjust. Sandra has been ill and is not taking communion just to keep herself away. She's over it and feeling better, but she's taking precautions. People who are sick are going, I just don't want to expose anybody else. Smart. But we can't hide and be afraid. The choice about who we are to be is whether we allow the fear of our health and the fear financially grip us. Be wise? Yes. Be prudent? Yes. But let us be brave. Let us be bold. Let us be a people who, in our mere presence, have a confidence and a peace like never before. And because we're so scattered, it's you, be you 15 or 85, who will be the hope in a society that is really scared right now. Within our church, we've got people who are almost to the point of trembling and others who are going, oh, please, we're in Christ Church. Let us move to the center and be prudent and discerning, and let us seize this opportunity. For never in our lifetime, now and in the coming weeks, will people's hearts and defenses be more open to the hope you have. Pragmatically, what do? People are going to need help with errands. People are going to need comfort. Even if you don't want to give them a hug, you can stand over the fence. Bring out a little stool, because Kiwis have tall fences to make good neighbors, right? So you can peer over the fence and have a yarn and talk to them. Here's a bag of peaches. I picked them with gloves on. Have the cup of tea. Listen. Be at peace. Never has there been such a time to up our prayer game. For some strange reason, the living God who spoke it into existence, who will, and it'll be over. That same God moves dependent on our partnering, collaborating with Him. He wrote that to the Corinthians, that you are collaborators, partners in what God is doing. The repeated exhortations to pray that God would move. I don't get it. I wouldn't depend on me. But God does. Great time to up our prayer game. Great time to up our love game. That's the secret to a missional life. Having your eyes up to intentionally love and listen and bless. I understand the fear you have. I understand the financial worry. I've been praying for you. Would you be offended if I prayed for you right now? And then don't do one of my prayers, do one of your prayers. And lift them up. I believe like never before that out of the crises that we face, there is such an opportunity, a phoenix. And I absolutely believe, for those of you who are visiting, when they say today's reading is from, you normally hear across the room, because they hold and they love this book and they read those passages with them. This is a people who love Him. If you're one of the people who are afraid, work spiritually in your prayers and in your posturing and in mastering with your will, your emotions, to trust Him. Rather than sowing fear, sow peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful. We are a living sacrifice and our lives are to Him. The pragmatics is at the end of the day, we're all going to see Him face to face, which means we're all going to follow Merv. Merv's up there picking property ahead of us and we're not going to get to choose it. Nolene and Janice already have places on the hill with the sea view. Those are taken. I close with this. You know my love for Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and their prophetic proclamation and story telling us about Jesus in ways that the world can understand. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the Narnia series, there is a place where the table breaks. The big stone table, giant stone table, breaks. It's the breaking of the control and rule of sin and brokenness. And here's the conversation. At that moment, they heard from behind them a loud noise, a great cracking, deafening noise, as if a giant had broken a giant's plate. The stone table was broken into two pieces by a great crack that ran down it from end to end. And there was no Aslan. The dead lion on the table was gone. Who's done it? Cried Susan. What does it mean? Is it more magic? Yes, said a great voice from behind their backs. It is more magic. They looked around. There, shining in the sunrise, larger than they had seen him before, shaking his mane, for it had apparently grown again, stood Aslan himself. "Oh, Aslan!" cried the children, staring up at him, almost as frightened as they were glad. "But what does it all mean?" asked Susan when they were somewhat calmer. "It means," said Aslan, "that though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she did not know. Her knowledge goes back only to the dawn of time. But if she could have looked a little further back into the stillness and the darkness before time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who has committed no treachery is killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack and death itself would begin to start working backward. In the silver chair, Lewis writes, "I have come," said a deep voice behind them. They turned and saw the lion himself, so bright and real and strong that everything else began at once to look pale and shadowy compared with him. We are a people of this book. We are a people of this promise. We are God's chosen people, continued into now and into the future. We are a people who have the hope that no one else in the world possesses. Not a karma, not a I hope I find God on a good day and I was religious enough. Not a I hope I did enough good works to pass the measure. We don't follow a religion and a ritual, we follow Him. This has not caught Him by surprise. He knows what's going to happen to your KiwiSaver account. He knows what's going to happen to New Zealand. He has every hair, those left, on your head numbered. Like Merv, we will see Him face to face. And we will be home. Let us be that hope in these coming days and weeks and months. It too will pass. It will affect us long after it's over. And the hope that we have and share could make the difference to thousands in this city.